I don't know what I've got behind me, my doors, my books. I don't know what I've got behind me, my doors, my books.
All right. So, welcome to the planning board meeting for the whatever day it is. But anyway, 17th of November. I'm Tom Boak, chairman of the planning board. This virtual planning board meeting, we're using the Zoom conferencing format. Agendas on the town's website. Information needed for the public to participate is out there also. If you wish to participate, You can join the Zoom webinar ID 891-3343-2534. You can dial in by phone at 929-205-6099, then enter that same meeting ID. As always, you can watch us on television, channel 1301, or stream on YouTube, Kennebunkport Television. During the meeting, only planning board and the current participant are selected on screen with audio connected. Others will be blacked out, audio muted, except when the board solicits public input. Item 5 tonight is a sketch plan of the revised Ocean Woods proposal. This is an opportunity to hear about it from the applicant. Public hearing only comes later after an application is deemed complete, which this is not. If a public hearing is on the agenda for a particular topic, as item 2 is tonight, the applicant and board members will have their discussions, after which I will open the public hearing. At that time, anyone who wishes to be heard should raise your hand in Zoom. We'll recognize those people who wish to talk one at a time. If you happen to be using a telephone to connect, raise your hand is *6, toggle mute is *9. So I will start with attendance. So I'm here. Nina is here. Scott?
I'm here.
Okay, here. You look much like John tonight. Okay, Ed, I see you up there.
Yes.
Larry?
Here.
Okay, and George said if he dials in tonight, it'll be late. Okay, well, Scott has come out of the shadows. John Harcourt is here. So we have all the regular members and one of the alternates. So we're in good shape. So first item is approval of minutes from the last meeting. So I'll let you folks discuss them because I was not there. So any problems with the meeting minutes the last time?
I thought they were fine.
I thought they were fine too.
Okay. So let's have some motions on the topic.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. So as I said, I read them and they looked fine to me, but I wasn't there. So Nina?
Approve.
Scott?
Approve.
Ed?
Approve.
Larry?
Approve.
John?
Approve.
Okay, the minutes are approved. That brings us to item 1, 210801, Vincent and Nathan Thielen, Longview Partners, authorized agents. So hopefully we can bring Jim Logan front and center here. Thank you.
Start. How are we doing?
Okay, there's Jim Logan.
Hi there. Good evening, folks. Thankful to be here tonight before you folks again. I appreciate your attention. To recap and to bring you back up to speed, this is a redivision of a 10-acre lot that was part of a 1983 subdivision of 4 lots. It belongs to Vincent Thielen, and the desire here is to separate one individual single additional lot, one new lot, out of that 10-acre lot for his son Nathaniel. And I know originally what we've done is we've resubmitted back to the town a preliminary plan application over again. We have buffed that up in a fashion we hope addresses the concerns and comments we heard at the last meeting, which I believe was the 15th of September. And I can go through those individually, one by one. I guess I would start with the subdivision name. Nina suggested we needed a subdivision name, as with most subdivisions. I'd like to suggest perhaps that the title right on the Dave Hughes, Livingston Hughes survey plan is adequate. It basically describes the redivision of lot number 3, and it entitles it in the exact same fashion as the original subdivision of 1983. If that's not sufficient, I can return to the client. I might suggest the Thielen family subdivision as an alternative, but I would prefer to leave the plan unchanged because every extra set of revisions ends up with another extension of time. So if the board is happy with the name as it's shown on the plan, that would be great. We've included an updated agent authorization for this application. I see by my notes, the one thing I did not resubmit back to the board for its official review and addition to the public record was the copy of the curb cut that Vince Thielen already previously had obtained for this property. I have a copy of it, and I'm sure that it's in the town file already in the public record, but I will, between now and hopefully what will be a scheduled public hearing, submit that one other item back to the board. Beyond that, I think we've accomplished everything we set out to do. We included a letter from the fire chief that Vince Thielen obtained from the chief regarding the dry hydrant that is pre-existing and maintained by the fire department and sits right in front of the fire pond as it's shown on the plan. And that has been added to the plan. That is attachment 19, which is in your application. That's a copy of the letter. We've included a list of waivers as we described and discussed those in the previous meeting. I had one for high intensity soil survey. I had hydrogeology. I had traffic, and I had stormwater. And I think we've provided justifications for each of those. The list of attached waivers is attachment 12. I believe it was Ed Francis that wanted to see a full-size plan of the original subdivision. And so we've provided as attachment 3 now a full 2-foot by 3-foot plan of that original subdivision showing lot 3. We have also provided the full-size and better printed copy of the beginning with habitats maps as Nina had requested, and that's attachment 13. As I said, the previously mentioned agent authorization is attachment 1. This is a pretty uncomplicated analysis, I think, that is not similar to a lot of subdivisions that are proposed out of a vacant piece of property, because this is just a redivision. No infrastructure is proposed, and it doesn't have a lot of sort of the same analysis as the board might have for a new presented subdivision. And that's about all I have. I'm hoping that we can schedule a public hearing and move on to the next stage. The lot is in the farm and forest zone. It has a 3-acre net lot area that has been met, and that is shown on the plan. The large-scale plan was also resubmitted. That's the full-size 2x3 subdivision amendment plan by Livingston Hughes that does show setbacks, dimensions, and the required net residential acreage calculations. So I'm in the hopes that we have completed our work in terms of the details and that the board will hopefully be comfortable moving forward, but I am available to answer any questions there may be. Board members?
Well, I have a question for you, Jim. You just gave a different name than you have in your application. Here, your application, you have a proposed subdivision name of proposed subdivision amendment of lot 3.
Okay, sorry.
And then if you look at David Hughes's plan, it says plan of proposed subdivision amendment of lot 3. And then goes on to describe subdivision for Robert La Rochelle, the same title as the original subdivision of 1983.
Okay, well, do you want to just propose subdivision amendment of Lot 3?
Yes, that's what I would like it to be, as officially as it's shown on the plan.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I have absolutely no questions on this because I just received it. Literally just received it. So,
Well, I've been through it pretty thoroughly since I think I volunteered to be case manager on it.
good.
So, and I think, Jim, you have provided most of the materials, and I was wondering about that curb cut. It would be nice if you'd include it. The only question I have is I don't think we approved the waivers. I wasn't sure from the sketch plan that we had. I don't think we approved those waivers yet. Is that correct?
I agree. I don't believe that officially took place. I think we discussed them, and I got the impression during that meeting that the board was satisfied with the discussion. I took the liberty of adding a note to the plan in the hopes that we could advance comfortably to the public hearing.
Yeah, okay. Well, I have no problem after looking at the soil surveys and the flood management plans and so forth. And the traffic, I don't think we need a traffic study or a stormwater management plan on this. I'm comfortable with the waivers. I wanted to ask you about the septic system. You mentioned in there, you have a large field septic system based on 4 bedrooms in the house, and there's going to be no garbage disposal. Are you going to include a pump in that? You weren't clear.
That's indeterminate, Nina, because until a builder with a very specific plan for what they envision for a grading around that foundation, it's difficult to determine if a pump is required or not. I would recommend keeping a foundation in a house shallow enough to provide gravity flow, but you can drag the horse to the trough. You can't always make them drink. Okay. Ultimately, it comes to whether a pump is required, ultimately depends on the elevation a builder selects.
Okay, well,
and that's predetermined or determined, not determined yet, let's put it that way.
Okay, well, that's probably something the planning board doesn't have to deal with right now. You listed, I'm not sure, you had your list of the subdivision requirements, and you weren't including financial capacity for construction since there is no construction yet. And shouldn't that be not applicable for one lot without streets?
Well,
I think I'm asking that of Werner too, I think, at this point.
I think it was intended to suggest that the single-family dwelling would be financially possible by an applicant, unlike the bonding for a road infrastructure type of thing. But I'll let Werner speak to that.
Yeah, so, in this particular situation where there's no, there's no common subdivision improvements that are being proposed, then, the financial capacity isn't really relevant in this situation. It's not like you're building, as Jim said, you're not building a road, you're not doing any, common infrastructure here that would require us to look at financial capacity or bonding.
Okay, so that's really not applicable. And I assume for the same reasons, we don't need an erosion plan for construction of the driveway.
That's correct. Yep. The driveway wouldn't show up. That wouldn't show up on the subdivision plan necessarily. I mean, we take care of those types of details if needed at the building permit stage.
Okay. All right. Well, with a copy of the curb cut permit, I don't have any problems. We have a letter from the fire chief saying that he thought everything was okay. What is the total acreage of the subdivision?
The whole acreage of the entire area is 10 acres. So what's under consideration for the board? We're subdividing or redividing a 3-acre lot from the 10 that exists. Now that's 10 gross acres, and the subdivision amended plan shows conformity that the newly created lot or the area left with the original house is still conforming to the ordinance as well. So both lots in the end will have their 3 acres of net upland area. They will, the larger lot or the home lot where the existing house is, that will retain 7 gross acres, but have its 3 upland acres, something to that effect, I believe. Okay. So, but it's a 10 acre total lot.
That's that lot, but the whole subdivision of 4 lots.
Oh, the 4 lots in total?
Yeah.
I don't know why that would be applicable in this case to the board if it wasn't part of your whole, the whole subdivision wasn't part of your, I guess I'd have to add them up. It's 26, 36, 36, 44 acres originally total.
Okay.
Yes, in 1983, 4 lots in total made 44 acres, I believe, is what this plan is showing.
Okay. Well, that's all that I needed to know. So,
Thank you.
Ed, did you have something to add? And you seem
I think there is a confusion. Certainly, I'm confused. I believe we are considering a change to an existing subdivision. It's going from 4 lots to 5 lots, and its name is not proposed subdivision of Lot 3. I think we need a name for the subdivision. And Jim, when you just answered the question, I think that makes me think there's a confusion that you're talking about the subdivision of an existing lot in a subdivision. And really I think we're stepped back 1 from that. The only reason this is before us is that it is an existing subdivision. If it was just a subdivision of that 1 lot, you wouldn't even be here. So
Yes.
when you're framing questions about the subdivision, it's that larger subdivision. That's what we need a name for. It shouldn't be a big deal. I thought the Thalen property was fine.
And that's the name that's referenced on Livingston Hughes' plan. Read the right-hand corner of Livingston Hughes' plan. It literally uses Robert La Rochelle's. It's a redivision of Lot 3 in that subdivision. That's the very reason I suggested we didn't change the name to Thelen Family Subdivision.
You're saying that the name of the 5-lot subdivision is subdivision of Lot 3? That seems silly.
No. So what the name of the original the name of the original subdivision, if you look at the original plan, and I'll just do a quick share screen here.
La Rochelle?
Yes. Yeah, that was the name of the original subdivision. It doesn't have a typical name that you would usually think of. It's listed, in 1983 is listed as subdivision for Robert La Rochelle.
Okay.
So what you have is a subdividing of Lot 3 of the
La Rochelle subdivision.
Right, of the Robert La Rochelle subdivision.
That's exactly the point I was trying to make.
I didn't get it from what you said, though, Jim. You were talking about a different plan, not the original one. One that's
So
not.
you're right. I was referring to the title of our updated or amended plan. You're correct.
Which is
But it
only.
goes back to this, but it refers back to this original subdivision that you're referring to, that you're talking about.
All right. I feel like I'm having an argument, and I shouldn't be. I'm just trying to explain myself. I've got your plan here, the one that says plan of proposed subdivision amendment of Lot 3. And on it, there is a portion of the La Rochelle subdivision, namely what was Lot 3, and it shows what you propose to do with it. I think that's fine. I asked the last time, you reminded me that I must have asked last time to see the plan for the entire subdivision, which is what is before the board. And so you gave me the original one, unchanged, and you said, well, really, this is an insert. I'm expanding it. So, is there anybody here who's comfortable saying that the name of the 5-lot subdivision should be from this point forward called the Plan of Proposed Subdivision Amendment of Lot 3? I'm not. Why not just make it the Thalen Family Subdivision? Let's not make it look like we didn't understand that we were looking at the entire 5-lot subdivision.
It's not the original subdivision. If you rename it as the another subdivision, it gets confusing.
That's what I thought. That's why I thought it was simpler as I suggested originally. I understood Nina's comment and needing to name it something and being consistent with that to avoid future confusion about this redivision of this original plan from 1983. I didn't want to change the name because to me that would just confuse future people looking at this redivision. I thought it was
fine. I'm fine with that. If you still want to keep it as the La Rochelle subdivision, that's fine.
So, okay. So then I think we have agreement, don't we?
That's not what the application says, but as long as we change that, yeah, fine.
I'll amend that page.
So could I just jump in for a minute? I must admit I'm a little lost.
Can I point out to the board, ultimately, Ed particularly, the application doesn't get recorded at the registry. I know all these things are part of the public record, but the plan that gets recorded is ultimately the bottom line in terms of what carries forward in the future. That's what gets recognized. I will revise that one item in the application to be consistent. But again, I think Livingston Hughes, in typical professional survey nomenclature, continued to use the reference from the original subdivision plan in their revision plan or their amended plan so that there would be no confusion at the registry. Did I make that point clear enough?
I think I'm getting it, Jim. I agree with you that there's no need to change that survey. I think it makes a proper reference to the fact that it is a subdivision of an existing lot in a subdivision. It just, the only thing that I think that needs to tie it together is the application page to the planning board should just say something to that effect.
It says proposed subdivision of amendment, proposed subdivision amendment of lot 3. It just didn't go on to say La Rochelle subdivision. You know, there's only so much room on the line. Basically it says what's on the plan. It just doesn't go far enough to include the name La Rochelle. It even refers to the 1982 original plan. So again, the plan was created in 82. It was signed in 83 and recorded in 83. I'll go back under the name and put it specifically exactly as it's shown on the subdivision plan, and it will be consistent because I want to get to the public hearing as soon as possible. Okay?
Yeah, I think we've made a mountain out of a molehill here. But,
Yeah.
No doubt. I don't think I've ever had an occasion where I went around as much about the name of a subdivision before in my whole career, but I need to get it right, whatever
I
it is.
agree with you, Jim.
Why don't we just say subdivision amendment of lot 3 and in parentheses Rochelle subdivision?
You got it. Instead of 1982, I'll put La Rochelle, and we will change it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it should be subdivision amendment, not proposed. Oh.
Okay.
So, anyone else with problems?
Well, I just had I admit I was a little confused about this whole deal. So let me just recap my understanding. So we have an existing 4-lot subdivision called for Robert La Rochelle, right? It's been there since 1983. And now we're making a new subdivision out of one of the lots in that subdivision. Is that what we're doing?
No,
Oh,
We're
we're
just
dividing
subdividing one of the lots. And it comes
A
before the
five-lot
board, and it
subdivision
comes
on-
before the board because it's a modification to an existing subdivision.
correct.
Right.
Right. Well, okay, so I think the title should definitely refer to the name of the existing subdivision somehow.
Yeah, and he's already agreed.
Okay, just checking.
Okay.
I don't understand why you were confused, Larry.
It's crystal clear now. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. Are we all set with this plan, with the mods that he's agreed to?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we have to formally approve the waivers?
Yeah, we do.
We have to decide that it's complete, right? First of all.
Right, and well, the waivers get approved as part of that, and I don't think the order matters, but yeah, we have to say that it's complete, and then get the waivers approved, and then we'll get on to a public hearing the next time.
I would move that this application is complete.
I'll second that.
Okay. Let me go through the usual names here. That piece of paper. Okay. So I'm in favor of that. Nina?
I'm in favor.
Okay. Scott?
In favor as amended.
And Ed?
Yes.
Larry?
In favor.
Okay. So, good. Now we need a motion to approve the three waivers?
There are four. I'll make a motion to approve the four waivers.
You got a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay,
Could you just
very good.
could you just briefly remind me what the four waivers are?
Yeah, they're a high-intensity soil survey, a hydrogeologic assessment,
Don't
a
need it.
traffic study, a stormwater management plan.
Don't need it. Don't need those four items.
No,
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So that's the four items, and it's moved and seconded, right? So we need
Yes.
to get the votes, and I'm in favor of that. Nina,
I'm in favor.
Scott,
In favor.
Ed,
In favor?
Larry.
In favor.
Okay, so we have said it's complete. We're going to get some couple more things from you, Jim, and we'll have the public hearing next time, which is like December 1st or so, beginning of December.
That would be great.
Okay, so
And thank you very kindly, board members.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
okay. Yeah, December 1st is the next board meeting. Okay, that brings us up to a public hearing on item number 2, the Trade Center, the approval for application to convert second floor retail to apartments on both buildings at 24 Ocean Ave. So if we could have Jim Logan is finished, he can be taken off. And I guess we have the presenter is Mr. Wade, is that correct?
David Wade.
That's correct. Yeah, that would be Dave Wade.
Okay, yes, can we get him brought forward, please? Okay.
There we go.
This was approved at the last, was declared complete at the last meeting. And since then, we've gotten a nice letter from the fire department. And Larry is the case manager on this. But I guess we'll start with Mr. Wade. If you have anything new and shining to present, or you want to respond to the fire department.
Yeah, Chief Everett and I met on the site. We walked through the area. You have in front of you a letter from him. We talked about egress. We talked about everything going in. He'd like to do some kind of a sprinkler or whatever. I have been investigating and I've talked on trying to do a 13D. I don't have enough information yet at this point. If we can make it work, if it's not too cost prohibitive, it's something we could look at. His alternative of making sure the rest of the whole building is tied into a sprinkler alarm system, which would be going through, a third party or, to the fire department, would be an acceptable alternative.
Okay.
In the lockbox, I guess it was a.
Yes, no problem at all with the lockbox. I love lockbox.
Sounded like you had a good meeting.
It was very good.
Yeah, he's a real asset.
So I guess, Larry, I guess you being case manager probably have some questions to ask.
I do, yep. So I appreciate your meeting with the fire department. That was a really good summary that we got from them.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was just going through the application. I had a couple of questions. So on line 3, I think we know it's in Dock Square, but I think it's also in Shoreland. And it might be in resource protection. I'm not sure. I couldn't really tell off of the map.
No.
But
No, so Dock Square is a general development district. So similar to like what we just dealt with the colony, so it's not designated as a shoreland, as a shoreland zone area. And this location is, as an extension of that, is not in the resource protection zone.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, just one box, Dock Square.
All right. And then down on line 8, where it asks for a percentage of the lot that's covered.
Got a number.
It'd be great if you had a percentage in there instead of a square footage number. Just to make
What are you looking for instead of a square footage?
Well, line 8,
Lot.
percentage, it's a percentage. Percentage of the lot occupied by structures.
Oh, let's see. That is on my notes. I covered that. Let me see if I can give you that. Building footprint is, let's see, 3460. Yep, it's 20%.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you just need to get that, correct that form so that it reads correctly.
Yeah, if you could just update the form.
I can do that.
Then I did struggle a bit with the square footage that you're showing. I noticed you have your calculation on, I guess, 2 pages back or 3 pages back, where you've got the existing lot size of 16,834 square feet and the building footprint of 3,460. But I noticed that building A area is different from building B. So my request is, could you show the area calculation for building A and a separate one for building B, and then combine them to show, verify your square footage that you're showing there.
Okay.
I tried several different things. I couldn't figure it out. So that would really help me if you could show the building A square footage at first, and separate from the building B.
Yeah.
And
You also have, where you may have been having a problem is size-wise, they are a little different, but yeah, I can do a breakdown for A and B, no problem.
That would be great. Thank you.
And then show a total back to the 3460.
Yep, that would be great. Yep.
Okay.
And then of course, line 12, commercial floor space, existing 5808, proposed 2808. But I couldn't understand how that number compares to the 3460.
Well, your
So I couldn't-
3460 is each floor, or is the footprint, the building footprint. So where we have 2 floors, that would end up going to double that. And your difference is we have a first floor area that is a public bathroom back at one of the buildings.
Okay.
I can give you a breakdown however you want to do it.
Well, I would like to be able to understand how the numbers come out. I couldn't figure that out either.
Okay. Well, there's 16 for commercial floor space. There would have been 5808, and I can get you how those numbers came out. And then we're removing 3,000 square feet of existing floor space and turning it into apartments.
Okay, so the 3,000. So if you could clarify the 3,000 as well as the 3460, that's where I'm stuck. See, the numbers didn't seem to line up with each other, and I couldn't unravel them. So if you could help me do that, that would be great.
Can give you the breakdown, and maybe it'll cause me some sleepless till I make sure, but I think I have it right.
I would appreciate clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see here. Let me see. Okay, let me see. I think, yeah, I think that's it. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else with questions on this modification?
I just had one. We had discussed how to keep it a long-term rental without it being an Airbnb or short-term rental. And, looking back at the definition of residential mixed use, it really doesn't cover that at all. Can we put a condition in there? Is it possible to put a condition in on our approval that it not be used for short-term rentals or anything like Airbnb?
I know you asked me for information about subletting and stuff like that. And I did send preliminary information to Werner on that. They are going to make, they're not looking at subletting or anything like that. They're looking for long term. So they would, if that's what you want to do, we'd have no problem with it. If it can be legal, there's the legal aspect I don't cover. I cover the building part.
Okay.
So actually, thank you for mentioning that, Nina, because I wrote the draft finding of facts and I had a statement in there about this same thing. So, I don't know what to do with this because unless there's some town statute preventing it, I don't see how it's not going to happen. Now, how it might not happen.
Yeah, I'm concerned with that too.
So I think I can give you, I can give you a little bit, of, background for that. So in the performance standards for residential mixed use, in the purpose statement, it talks about, providing for workforce housing there, so I'm just scrolling through here. I don't think we have anything specific in there that would, other than it does spell out under L that the dwelling units shall be occupied as a primary residence. Primary residence shall be defined as more than 6 months per year. So, I think it certainly up to the board, but you could interpret that as, you could interpret that provision in the ordinance as requiring that they be long-term rental units as opposed to short-term.
So that would exclude subletting if, for example, a cook decided to leave and decided to sublet what they had, but that's okay. That would still be a long term. You assume it would be 6 months or more. I'm just concerned about 2-night rentals and things like that. So I think we can restrict to that if we have that in the description.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's fine because the ordinance spells out that the purpose is that they're to be occupied as primary residences. And a short-term rental is not whenever it's being occupied short-term, it's not acting as a primary residence at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And an STR is 1 month or less.
Less than 30 days.
Right.
Well, I think that's a good idea, Werner, and maybe we could put it in as a condition and say something to the effect of consistent with the ordinance and paraphrase the intent there.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, I mean, you could, Larry, I can work with you if you want to look at the language that's in the RMU standards,
Okay.
to make sure that's, that essentially really you're just going to reiterate that provision of the ordinance in the FO, in the findings.
Thank you. Let me put something together and I'll see how it.
I like that better than my idea the last time of making a deed change, because I think there's expense that goes with that and some trepidation. So I think this is a much more straightforward way.
Yeah, this is good. This is a good good solution, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the help, Werner.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think if you can tie a specific provision in the ordinance back to it, it's
Back when you said the ordinance, you're talking about the residential mixed use ordinance, right?
that's correct. Yeah. Yeah. The
Okay.
performance standards. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
All right, so are we ready to, I guess we might as well open up the public hearing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So can I request if anybody would like to speak to this particular project, please raise your hand. Anybody raising hands?
Nothing.
Okay. So are we ready to approve this thing, or we're going to wait for a little more information and get it squared away next time?
I would move to approve it based on the discussion we had tonight.
I agree. It's there.
Okay. So we'll get the approval. He'll provide the extra data to Larry or to Werner, so that it can be provided to Larry to get the finding of facts all squared away.
Can't capture the wording just so, but
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I'll take a motion there on this topic.
I move to approve the application.
Second.
All right. So I'm in favor. Nina?
I'm in favor.
Scott?
In favor.
Ed?
in favor?
Larry?
In favor?
All right. It is approved. Thank you much.
Excellent.
Thank you, Bud.
We'll have the finding facts next time.
Yep.
I'll be there just to sit in and listen. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
David.
thank you.
Very good. All right. The next item, number 3, 211-001, KJ Trudeau Properties, Atlantic Resource Consultants LLC, agent, a sketch plan review for a 9-lot subdivision on 43-acre lot, Goose Rocks Road, map 15, block 1. So, do we have the the Atlantic Resource Consultants, I guess. Is that who's going to be coming online?
Yes, so you have Lucian Langlois there in the audience who can be promoted.
All right. So you're muted at the moment.
All right,
So,
good evening.
Good evening. If you could give us a description of your sketch plan, we can evaluate it.
Yeah, thank you for your guys' time. My name's Lucian, and I'm with Atlantic Resource Consultants. I'm an environmental specialist with them. And I have been working with Jim Logan of Longview Partners on the design for the application before you tonight. So we're looking at doing a 9-lot subdivision on a little over a 43-acre parcel. The parcel is zoned as farm and forest. A small portion of it is located within the shoreland zone. Wetlands and streams have been mapped on the property. And the design that you see before you involves a loop road. There are some driveways to access lots. One driveway will be a shared driveway to access lots 3 and 4. The design also includes about 6.5 acres of open space that does a perimeter around the parcel and captures some wetland area in the northwestern section. We would like to propose individual wells and individual septic for each lot. And as far as fire protection, we'd be looking at a cistern. An alternative to that could be residential sprinklers. That's kind of the short of it. A lot of work has been put into this by Jim Logan. He's been working on this for multiple years, actually. And that's what I got for you today. This is honestly my first time doing this, so I'm just giving you a short summary and be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Lucian, I'll go ahead and bring up this, the plan itself, just so folks can see it here.
Yes, please.
Am I hooked in? Am I back?
Yeah, Jim, you're
back.
Thank you. I just wanted to add briefly to what Lucian has presented to you. That was a great presentation, Lucian. By the way, Lucian Langlois, for the board members who are not familiar with Lucian, previously Lucian worked for the DEP and was one of the field services staffers who we used to reach out to determine whether a thing was a real stream or not, or whether we had significant vernal pool habitat and so forth. So he is a very apt and able presenter of such an application. I wanted to just provide some more background and fill in for the board members. This is a lot that goes back for me prior to my leaving Albert Frick Associates in 2016. I've been working on this property since probably fall of 2014 and have been on this property through multiple seasons, several spring seasons included. So we've had a lot of work done with regard to wetlands. We've reviewed for vernal pool habitat within the project area, and we think we have a good handle on it. It is a very typical, I want to say, complicated landscape in the fashion that's very common to most of Kennebunkport. The juxtaposition of wetlands and uplands, in this case, did not yield a good analysis for a cluster of any kind. And quite frankly, an individual lot subdivision such as this is probably the best use of the property to allow it to be developed for residential use in this 3-acre net zone in a fashion that provides good privacy between homes. They're separated by wetland areas, but that each home site does have a considerable amount of upland and can adequately meet setbacks and so forth. The only thing lacking on this sketch plan app, and by the way, the sketch plan is far in excess of what you typically would see during a sketch plan review. The other angle I think I would like the board to just be aware of and weigh in on is the 2 back lots that we have shown back there in the rear that are accessed by a common drive. And the idea of a common drive there is to try to minimize wetland impacts to the best extent possible. The depth of this property versus its width, the ratio of depth to width did not lend itself well to the wider road accessing all of the individual lots. So we're proposing a narrower right-of-way to access the 2 rear lots. We are contemplating a name for this subdivision, and we'll get back to you with an official one. I'm sure with a road that's proposed, we'll need to run a potential road name past the E911 people to make sure that we can come up with an adequate road name. You can see the stream that kind of bisects this property. That's the same stream that this board may have had some recollection about because it was the tributary to the larger stream that was part of your review for the Apple Blossom Drive 2 lot. I think we got 2 additional lots for Jonathan Trudeau almost directly across Goose Rocks Road from where this site is. So this is the same drainage system that we considered across Goose Rocks Road, only this is much, much more upstream. So any questions, Lucian and I could handle them from the board together.
Jim, can I, this is Ed, can I ask about the open space?
Yes.
I'm looking at the concept plan here.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows the open space mainly up in the northwest corner.
Correct.
That color, the yellow, then extends around, down around most of the property down to Goose Rocks Road on both sides. When
That's correct. We intended every owner to have a strip of land inside the outer property line that would connect ultimately to that bigger piece of open space.
The bordering 25-foot typical yellow, is that included in the 285768 square foot of open space that you've calculated?
I do believe it is, yes. Though I'm not the preparer of that plan, I think that's what the color coding is signifying.
But the 15% requirement, if I recall right, is met by the open space that's up in the northwest plus the open space that's around the perimeter and including Moose Rocks Road.
I don't know if Moose Rocks Road, only a portion maybe of that was included as the open space. I'm not certain.
Okay.
We don't have, I think we only have half of that as our right of way. I would have to refer some of these specific questions probably to the land surveyor of record, and he's not available tonight, but I could certainly, he's the one that prepared this sketch plan, could certainly ask him that question. But I believe yes, the open space 15% requirement was including the strip all the way around, as well as the block up in that northwest corner. It was intended to be all contiguous to each of the individual lots, and the 25-foot strip would then keep the edge of each individual lot inside the exterior perimeter property line by that 25 feet. I believe that we also meet the proportional requirements for what amount of that open space is upland versus wetland, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Well, lots 8 and 9 aren't attached to that yellow.
That's
area.
true. Those two internal lots do not attach to that, correct?
So the only reason I was pushing on it, I understand this is a sketch plan, and so we're really just feeling it out in terms of what the board might be concerned with. I believe the intent of the open land is that it be available for use by all of the lots. And right now, I don't think that there is access from all of the lots. So that might be something that when you go work on this, that take into consideration.
We can do that, Ed. That's a good point.
That if the access for the other lots is via that strip, then the maintenance of the open land, will be a concern, right? How is lot 1 going to get there if that yellow strip isn't maintained? Maybe you want to do something as simple as having a right of way up through lots 3 and 4 that give everybody access.
Could very well be. That very well could be. We'll go back to the drawing board on that one.
All right, so that's just a thought I wanted to leave you with.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board members with comments?
I have a couple of questions. I'm a little confused by this. I'm looking at your soils map, and it looks like it's different from the map you're showing here with the sketch plan. And I guess I'd like to see where the soils are on these lots. I'd also, is the stream and the setbacks, is that also your delineation of the FEMA flood zone?
No, the FEMA flood zone is shown on a separate map within the packet. It's not depicted on the plan that we're looking at right now. It is associated with that stream, though, that goes sort of in the middle of lots 8 and 9. And as far as the soils map, it is much more extensive than the proposed project. But if you look at that soils map, the parcel in question here has been harvested for timber, so you can sort of make it out on the aerial image there. The majority of the lot is a limon soil, and I think Jim can probably speak more to this. I mean, we have looked a bit doing some test pits for subsurface waste disposal design. We haven't got further than that. Yep, you can see it right there.
There you go. Lucian is correct. And Nina, we have done preliminary soil tests for some of these lots. We have not completed enough sufficiently yet to hit the preliminary plan stage of your review, but we will, before we return to the board, have 2 passing soil test pit sites per lot in accordance with the ordinance. We don't have those accumulated yet. And I will also suggest far more accurately than the soil survey that Lucian provided, which is just the county soil survey for your sketch plan review. I don't anticipate asking for a waiver of high intensity soil survey for this subdivision because it's a brand new one. Unlike the first one, we will have a high intensity soil survey, and it will be much more in detail than the map that you're currently reviewing.
Okay. And are you going to have a wildlife survey and trees marked, significant trees?
I think what we'll probably ask for is a waiver of large trees, except within the approved building areas and then maybe just go back and search those out. Since it's been logged as heavily as the air photo here is showing, and they've used a pretty recent air photo on that soils map, there's not a lot of large timber left out there. I'm not suspecting we're going to find any specimen trees that'll meet your ordinance requirement anyway, but we would certainly search out the areas in the air where the buildings would be expected to be built.
Okay. I'd like the map to be, when you get to a more detailed map, I'd like the map to be a little more clear about where the flood zone is and where you're putting in the roads across wetlands.
Absolutely.
And the size of the lots. Well, you've got them detailed down below. But,
right. However, you will get a lot more information in the next iteration in the way of internal lot line lengths and the direction of each of those lines. We did not build that into the plan yet because it is, in fact, still sketch review.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay. No, I'm fine then.
Okay, what about, are we going to have a site walk?
Oh.
This is going into winter, but you know.
Oh, quickly, before the snow.
Yeah.
Before another rain with 2 inches.
Okay, well.
Could I add one more question?
Sure.
On the driveway that goes from the big circle up to lot 3 and 4, you show a 33-foot wide easement. Why that particular width? Why isn't that a 50-foot?
I think Warner might be able to speak to that with regard to the width of a required right-of-way to serve 2 dwellings.
Is it 2?
Yeah, just because it's only 2, you don't need to you don't need the 50-foot wide right away for the 2.
Thank you.
Will the fire chief approve that? Those are long drives.
Well, that's just the width. That's just the width of the right of way itself. Jim hasn't provided the constructed, any of the construction details for all practical purposes. That would be, that would be another private road.
Rest assured, to get back to the board, we're gonna weigh in with the fire chief on all of this configuration. Those long driveways somewhere in there, we're gonna most certainly have the need for a fire truck turnaround.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we've provided adequate information on the sketch plan. Does any other board members have comments, questions at this point?
Well, when I was looking at this, what impressed me was the amount of, I guess, crossings. I guess that's a stream, multiple streams. And the thought occurred to me was there another configuration for the road that would minimize the number of stream crossings because, well, okay, we got 1, 2, 3. And, instead of having a loop like that, just maybe run one road right back from lot 1 to 3 and 4, and then a separate road from lots 7 and 6 and 7, and connect lot 5 to lot 4. I don't know.
We were challenged by the town's limitation of 1,000 feet on a single road.
How far is it from the Goose Rocks Road to the back of lot 4?
More than 1,000 feet. More than 10 inches. It's, on a 1 inch equals 100, it would be a 10-inch run that'll give you your 1,000 feet, right?
We have in the past, though, waived that requirement.
That's good to know, and I appreciate the board's input. We might go, if the board would consider a waiver, we might consider a single entrance out to Goose Rocks. We were kind of happy to have what were 2 possible considerations as we showed them, both of which we feel meet the site distance requirements on the Goose Rocks Road and the configuration of Goose Rocks. We certainly can, this is just...
Please, Jim, don't miss the point. The reason that you're being asked for how long is that distance by Larry is so he can gauge whether or not it might possibly be waiverable. And
I
come back and say it's under 10 inches, it makes that difficult.
Yeah.
You know,
So, yeah, you don't have to try to answer it right now, but I think it would be useful to see whether you have alternate layouts that, you know, might require a waiver if it wasn't too extreme, you know.
Okay.
Of course, the fire department's got to get involved in approving that as well.
Absolutely. But this is the stage at which we would like to get the input from the board, and obviously we can go back to the drawing board.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got.
Okay.
It might tie in with that open space concern as well, Larry.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess if no other members have anything to say, you've heard what we think of the sketch plan. We don't.
Did the board make a site walk?
Yeah.
That's I'll go.
Yeah, me too. That'd be
Sounds
good.
Okay.
Although I think of you and ticks in general, and it's not tick season. So.
Oh, I got news for you. There are ticks out there. No. Don't be confused. We picked a bunch of them today. My partner had one embedded in his stomach.
Oh,
and it was a deer tick. And it was in your area. I'm sorry. Kennebunkport's a hotbed.
Let's wait until hunting season is over, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
If that's the case and we want to wait until after the end of November, I am leaving the area and would like it to be, if possible, in that first week of December. I have to, I'm leaving for a couple of weeks on the 4th. I don't know if it's possible to squeeze it in before then.
Yeah, we can take a look at some dates.
Okay.
You know, and get back to you on that. So,
okay.
We'll need to make sure that we get that, get it posted,
for sure,
and whatnot. But yeah, we can look at some dates.
Okay. Let me know what you find out. I appreciate it.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, folks.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, thank you. I guess we're ready for Steve Doe and Ralph Austin on the Yachtsman. Item number 211003, Yachtsman Hotel and Marina, Sebago Techniques agent. It's an initial review for a proposed conversion to three-season hotel, from three-season to a year-round hotel. So, there's Ralph, and I see something labeled Steve. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Gentlemen.
So, proceed with this.
All right. So we're here on behalf of Yachtsman Hospitality LLC. They're also this property is also part of the KRC collection. And this hotel, it's been around for a while, and it's been operated as a three-season hotel. It's a conditional use in the riverfront zone, and they'd like to make it a four-season hotel. There's really no change. There is no changes to the site itself. They will do some winterization in the building, some interior changes, but essentially, and some utility winterizing. But the balance of the site, as you see it today, is going to remain as it is. So, because of this change, we do have to come in front of the board for approval for this. I don't need to add anything else. I'd be happy to answer any questions, Jay.
No changes to the configuration, you're saying?
No.
You're just
changing it from three seasons to four season.
So why would anybody be worried?
I'm hoping not. I think it adds, one of the pluses is it adds, full-time employment for people that are, get laid off for the winter time here. So that's kind of a plus that we see.
Okay. So any questions for the?
I have a couple of questions. Warner, this is riverfront zone, so we don't have to meet the shoreland or resource protection zone requirements?
Correct, yes. So riverfront being general development, so this is not subject to your RP or other standard shoreland zone
So
restrictions that you have.
he has X'd both items as part of item 3. Should he remove the X's?
We don't need to have those. I mean, if you look at the, this is where the question is, how fine do you parse things out? So the property, does own, the way that you look at the plan here, indicates, some ownership of, land that's below that's below the high water line. And so technically those pieces that are out and, in and part of the river, are those RP? Yes, those are RP. But what we're dealing with specifically here is the hotel itself up on the, up in the upland area. So I guess it just depends how much you want to parse it, how fine you want to parse it. But, technically when you're looking at the plan, you've got, submerged lands that are considered RP.
Well, then wouldn't he have to, the setbacks for the RP? Wouldn't that make it non-conforming?
He's not making any changes.
It's, the buildings are non-conforming due to setback. But the buildings themselves are not in RP. What I'm saying is that you have submerged land, that is, that's, call it the bank, and portions, portions of the river that are, per that definition, are RP. But it's a portion, it's a portion of the property. It's not the, it's not the property in its entirety. You have land that's below the normal high water mark there. That's, that's under ownership of the yachtsman.
Okay. And that's RP. The buildings are outside the setback of the RP.
No. So the buildings are not, so there's not a setback to RP. There is a water body setback, that, you have a 75-foot setback,
Right.
but these are they're pre-existing structures, and so they're legally non-conforming as it relates to setback. But they're not within RP.
Okay.
But not within RP. Okay.
Warner, I'd like to ask you a question. So it's a legal non-conforming property in that it's also a hotel and a residential community, right?
No, it's in the riverfront zone, which riverfront, allows for, hotels as a conditional use. So the building is non-conforming because it doesn't meet a 75-foot setback. That, and I'm from looking at it, you have lot coverage non-conformities and things of that nature, but it's not a use issue. What you have is, there's previous documentation, that referenced this as seasonal. And I don't believe that it was ever restricted necessarily as seasonal, but it was presented as, it was identified and presented as seasonal in previous documents. And hence why Steve and Ralph are here to, I would say clarify that, that it's not, again, to their request of going from 3 to 4.
Right. So an expansion of use wouldn't be an issue because
it's not a non-conforming use.
right. And it doesn't advance the non-conforming, right?
That's correct. Yes, it doesn't expand the nonconformity because they're not changing anything relative to the structure other than interior, some interior elements.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess it sounds fairly straightforward, just similar to what we did with the earth, right? Which was to extend that to year round.
Correct.
So, all right. So, do we have a motion that this is a complete application?
I'll make a motion, it's complete.
I'll second that.
Okay, and we'll go through the usual. I'm in favor. Nina?
I'm in favor.
Scott?
In favor.
Ed?
Yes, in favor.
And Larry?
Favor.
Okay, and we need a case manager. Don't all speak at once, I mean, you know.
I'll do it.
Okay, Scott, okay. All right, so, very good. And so what we'll do then is have a public hearing next time on December 1st. So that's okay with you, Steve?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, well, good. That brings us to item 5, which I know everyone's been just itching to discuss. It's item 21104, Ocean Woods Sebago Techniques Authorized Agent. This is a preliminary plan review of the revised sketch plan, it's called. It's removal of 30 units, which is 49 bedrooms and 2 apartments, and a 108-seat restaurant to be replaced with 30 units, 43 bedrooms, hotel cottages and replacement restaurant, and 6 hotel rooms above all within the existing developed area. So, and this is to discuss that sketch plan that you have provided us. Now, Werner, is Amy going to be part of this?
Yes, she's going to be brought forward here in a moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Amy.
Oh, Amy.
Hi.
Hi. Can everybody see
Okay.
me?
Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So I guess we should start with Steve presenting the revision.
Sure. I'll share my screen. Oops. Yep, that's got the right one. Go to the right plan. So this is the, I assume everybody can see my plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I've done is I've taken the site plan that was part of the original application, excuse me, that we withdrew, and marked it up to show the changes that we're proposing with the sketch plan. There are some elements that are the same, but there are a few differences. So more, I guess this may be more for Amy. So this is Dyke Road over here. The existing building sits generally in this location. And what you see in green is what we're saying is the developed portion of the property where the existing use is operated. This lot, which actually continues further out, is essentially undeveloped. There is a trail that runs along the side here, but it's all wooded. So with this plan, the restaurant is in the same location with a pool. We are proposing to put 6 cottages, or 6 rooms, I should say, on the second floor of this building here. The main entrance will be here, like is in the previous plan. This is the parking lot, which is where the existing parking lot is. And then the smaller buildings are the cottages. So we've made a couple changes here. We added some larger ones, got rid of the micro cottages that were part of the original plan. Those are no longer part of this. And then we have a line of cottages, just like similar to the old one, lined up over here. These 4 cottages are unchanged. 12 and 13 are the ADA compliant cottages. We have 3 cottages here, which we had before. And then the major change is we're actually taking a access or fire lane road through here and emptying out into the parking lot. And then we're adding 4 additional cottages here. There's 2 here that we're actually moving to here and here. And then this, we'll be looking to put our stormwater area in this location here. Currently, there is no stormwater on the property. So this is kind of bringing the project into compliance by adding a stormwater element. From this line here, that way will remain natural and undisturbed. So all this that was previously part of the project will remain undisturbed. So that gets us away from the stream setback and the likes there. A couple other items, kind of minor, is we're going to add some golf cart parking in the parking lot. So when guests are leaving or going in town, they have a place to actually park their golf carts and get in their vehicle and leave the site. We also are adding a maintenance shed up in the front here. We had some periodically throughout the site, but because of the closeness of these, we're going to move this up here closer to the kind of the operations center of the complex. This is still going to be served by public water, sewer, and as I mentioned, we'll be doing stormwater treatment. And that's essentially all I need to add or discuss with you. I don't know if Ralph wants to add anything to it.
No, I mean, I think the primary purpose we're here tonight is to show the concept to the board and get input primarily, I think, from town attorney as to whether this concept meets the land use ordinance provisions regarding non-conforming uses.
Okay. So, Steve, I just had a minor question. Can you point out there was a piece of there was a man-made well, not well, a pond. Yeah,
Yep.
Where was that?
That's, let me zoom in a little bit closer here. And so I don't know if you can see this dashed line right here. That's the existing man-made pond that's out there.
Ah, okay.
We are going to kind of modify that area. We do have a cottage and a half in that. This is still proposed as a stormwater treatment area. That's where that sits. And I don't know if I provide. No, in the original application, I had provided documents on that was not there when this project was originally approved and built.
I remember your.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess the main question for us is, does this scaled back version, relative, how does it do relative to land use ordinance? And so I guess I'd like to hear from Amy at this point.
Tom, can I interrupt you for a second?
Certainly.
There's a bigger question for me. I've been going through this, and I've been going through all of the opinions and a lot of case law. And I've come back to whether this is grandfathered in as one, a restaurant, or two, a hotel. We've had incidental information about whether this has operated continually, first as a restaurant and also as a hotel. And I'm a bit confused. And quite frankly, it's also confusing because of the shutdown in 220. And so when I look back and looked at all of the information that was given, I looked at when Governor Mill ordered the hotels and motels closed, and that was April 5th, 2020, until just before the July 4th weekend. Giving all of this the pandemic benefit of the doubt, I don't want to address 220. I would give the applicants all of 220, given the seasonal nature of the hotel. But going back to everything that I've read in letters that we've gotten and the information that we've pulled in, I'd like to see actual evidence of use. First, I think on the restaurant, which I think is separate, and second, on the hotel. From 2016 to 2019, I'd like to see that it's operated. Because if it hasn't been operated in those years, then it's not grandfathered after the zoning change in 1985, and this whole application is extinguished. The proof I'd like to see to show me that that restaurant was operating was sales tax receipts from those years, and also sales tax receipts or hotel tax or rental tax forms showing rental income for those years as well, 2016, 2019. The incidental evidence that somebody stayed on in a condominium does not bespeak itself of hotel use. It sounds like somebody's relative or somebody they let stay there. I want to see rental income, or, you know, a hotel income, basically, or I want to see hotel tax that's been paid during those years. Proof that each of those operated as a business. Harrington is an astute businessman who took this over, and he should have done his diligence when purchased. This is really important, as this should be under strict scrutiny for grandfathering, and everybody has seen that. So I think that's the question that has to be answered first.
Nina, also with respect to the restaurant, wouldn't it require a victualler's license as well?
Yes.
It has one.
Yes. Well, you could have the license, but that's not proof that it actually operated. I mean, I could get a victualler's license, I could get a liquor license, but that doesn't mean that the restaurant actually opened its doors and operated. There should be sales tax receipts.
But if you don't have a license, you couldn't have been a restaurant.
No, if you don't have a license, then we're extinguished right there. Okay, for 1 year. And I don't care if they started up operations after that. You know, in 2016, say they didn't have that license or they don't have sales tax receipts, then any activity after that was illegal as far as I'm concerned, or not permitted.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak to that?
Yes, please.
The board knows that this is not a complete application. We're here on a concept plan about how we would like to develop the property. When we come forward with a complete plan, we understand what we need to prove to the board, and we will provide that evidence. But we don't have it here, because if you say, based on a town attorney opinion or your own conclusion, that the way we're showing this will not work, then we can't go forward with that plan. That's why it's not a complete application yet. That's why we don't have all that evidence that you're looking for, Nina.
Well, you know, in your last application, you did purport to put that evidence forward.
Right, and that application has been withdrawn.
Right.
Here on this proposal, and before we develop all of that information and do all of the engineering and all of the legal research and gathering all of the information that's needed on a multiple number of issues, we need to know if we can go forward with this proposal.
Well, why should the board spend its time going forward with this? And there are issues on that plan as well in terms of expansion of use. Why should we go forward with that and then go into a public hearing before we actually know that there can be a plan?
You're not going forward into a public hearing yet. We're here to find out whether this concept of the cottages is or is not an expansion of a non-conforming use.
Okay, well, it's up to the board whether they want to spend their time on expansion of use. And I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to sit here and go through the plan, but I'm telling you what I need for that plan to exist.
Understood, totally understand. But we discussed at the hearing or meeting in October the concept of coming forward with a different application, and it would not be a complete application. When we come forward, if we go forward with this concept, we'll come back with a complete application. And before a public hearing, this board is going to go through everything we present, and we'll discuss those issues then.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm willing to go through and look at this plan and discuss it in terms of whether it meets the requirements, if it fulfills the requirements for, use, a non-conforming use, as was, presented years before. I'm willing to go forward with that and look at the plan as it's set out and all of its setbacks and where you have things. I'm just letting you know that, the plan itself, is an issue.
No, understood.
Or I should say the application itself is an issue. Right. Okay. So I just wanted to throw that monkey wrench in there so you're aware of it and what is needed.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amy, have you given this sketch plan some thought?
Hi. Yes, I've read the materials. I have looked at the plan. I have reviewed my letter to the board dated September 8th and a submission that came in from Mr. Austin on October 27th, as well as an email that I received today from attorney Andre Duchette, who represents the Lamey family, who I believe is a direct abutter to the project. So I've reviewed all of those things. I'm prepared to talk about this issue, but I will say that I will do whatever is the board's pleasure, but there is a threshold issue that I believe Nina has raised, and if there is a question of whether or not the grandfathered use or the legally non-conforming use has been abandoned under your ordinance, and I understand that this is not a complete application, but is the applicant prepared to produce that information? I guess I would ask that question because before getting into this legal analysis, which may have an impact on not just this application, but potentially others, does the board want to ask the applicant to provide that information? Or can we get any indication from the applicant that that is forthcoming?
If I might, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
We obviously don't have that information with us tonight. It's not part of what was submitted. We believe that this is a legally existing non-conforming use, and we will provide what information is available, and then obviously the board will make a determination whether they agree that it's a legally existing non-conforming use. But so we know we have to provide that information, and we know it has to be more substantial than what was presented in the prior application that's been withdrawn.
Okay, and Ralph, I don't want to put you on the spot, Ralph, but just in terms of questions of whether annual licenses for, victualers and restaurant license, hotel, annual evidence of that during the period that is an issue. Are you aware of that evidence existing, or are you?
I haven't looked into that for tonight. I didn't realize that was going to be the issue tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Tom, what is the board's pleasure? I'm prepared to talk about the issue. What I will say as an initial matter is I think that matters of interpretation of ambiguous provisions in your ordinance are up to the planning board. And I think we are treading into that, or at least I think there are arguments on both sides, and I'm prepared to sort of talk that through with the board if you'd like to, and answer any specific questions that you have, if you would like me to do that.
I believe we would like that information.
Okay. So if you'll indulge me, I'll start a little bit with a summary of my letter from September 8th to set the table for how I think the board should be looking at this. And ultimately, you need to be the fact finder on this application. And there may be some facts that you will need to find before you can make a determination of whether or not what is being proposed here is an expansion of a non-conforming use, which is not permitted. And so one thing I think the board should bear in mind as you look at the analysis and we look at the various ordinance provisions that could apply here, is that the law disfavors the continuation of non-conforming uses. So what that means is any provisions in your ordinance that limit non-conforming uses should be liberally construed. And likewise, any provisions in your ordinance that limit the continuation of a non-conforming use should be followed strictly. So given that the law sort of disfavors non-conforming uses, the question here, I think, that arises is whether or not the non-conforming conditions that existed on the lot when this used to be called, was it the Goose Rocks Inn?
Yeah.
1985, whether or not that hotel plan and structure on this lot can be repurposed and redistributed into separate new structures on the lot that did not exist before, as long as the floor area has not been increased, and or as long as the ground area devoted to this particular use has not been increased. Now, with the original proposal, it's my understanding we have a large lot, and we don't have a non-conforming lot, right? And we are not talking about non-conforming structures, either as they existed in 1985 when we had the Goose Rocks Inn, or as being proposed here in this proposed plan. It's my understanding, and Ralph, correct me if I'm wrong, or Steve, but I think the way this was proposed was to meet your current dimensional requirements for setbacks and lot coverage and everything else with respect to this lot.
Correct.
Okay. So with that assumption, we're not talking about a non-conforming lot, and we're not talking about non-conforming structures. We are talking about non-conforming uses, this being a hotel use, which is no longer allowed in this zone. Commercial uses in general are not allowed in this zone. You couldn't put a new hotel here in this zone on an undeveloped parcel. So the first cut of this project proposed, and I'm looking at the cottages that were sited on the lot in an area that had previously not been developed or had not arguably been devoted for that particular use, meaning that I think, if I'm remembering the percentages, as much as 10% more of the overall parcel would be devoted to this use, with the cottages being distributed on the parcel in a different manner than the development area that I believe is marked in green here on this parcel. And, in my letter of September 8th, I did cite your definition that said that there are a number of things that can constitute an expansion of a use, including the devotion of more floor area to a particular use and the devotion of more ground area devoted to a particular use. And though I didn't go beyond that, because I think this clearly was a devotion, in my opinion, a devotion of more ground area devoted to a particular use, that particular configuration, in my mind, and in my opinion, again, subject to, factual determinations by the board, did not seem to comply with the rule that you can't have an expansion of a non-conforming use. So what they have done is they've shrunken where the new structures will go into what they are calling the previously developed area occupied by the Goose Rocks Inn, and maybe it had some other names since then, right? But since it became a legally non-conforming use. And again, I'm making no judgments. That's solely within your province as to where that boundary is. Okay? That's one issue with respect to ground area. Another issue that I'll just mention briefly is that what does it mean to have the use of more ground area devoted to a particular use? And I do think this is a factual issue, and I'll just name it for the board because I think I would be deferring to the board in its discussions of what this term means. But for example, even though we've had an area in green, perhaps that was sort of seen as having been mowed or been used in a particular way for the way the original hotel and restaurant were used, and also a parking area that my understanding is was never paved, that this green area that is being repurposed or redistributed is certainly using that area within the green in a different manner and arguably in a more intense manner than was used previously. I just leave that to you as for you to think about whether that means that still, if we're in this green area, you have the use of more ground area devoted to a particular use such that you would have an expansion of a non-conforming use. Let me put that to the side for the moment, and unless there are any questions about that. Should I continue?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So where I think we are going to be talking sort of most about is this issue of how we look at the various sections of your ordinance all together, given that non-conforming uses are supposed to be abolished as quickly as justice should require, that we should try to get rid of those over time. When you have a variety of ordinance provisions, and the ones that I want to focus on are 8.8A, 8.8A primarily, and the definition of a non-conforming, an expansion of a use. not an expansion of a non-conforming use, but an expansion of a use, and how Section 8.8A operates with respect to the concept of an expansion within an existing structure or an expansion within a new structure. So the question here is, we certainly have many new structures here. And one threshold question I think the board is going to have to look at if you're going to be addressing this issue of whether we have an impermissible expansion of a non-conforming use is whether that's permitted. In other words, whether a non-conforming commercial hotel use may expand into a new structure or structures, which I think indisputably this proposal does propose to do, right? And where do we look to determine what the answer to that should be? I think one place to look is 8.8A, which says that expansions of non-conforming uses are prohibited except that non-conforming residential uses may be expanded within existing residential structures or within expansion of such structures in shoreland zones as allowed in the section. And I'll just paraphrase, that's your 30% expansion rule, right? That you see in the shoreland zone. If you have a residence, there's a one-time allowance for a 30% expansion. That's a rule that the Maine DEP has provided for in the minimum shoreline zoning guidelines, and most towns have adopted them. Okay, so no question, we're not dealing with a residential use here or non-conforming residential use. But if you just look at 8.8A, it's saying expansions of non-conforming uses are prohibited, and that includes commercial uses such as hotel uses. So the broad rule here is expansions of non-conforming uses are prohibited of all kind, with a very narrow exception that says if you're residential, you can expand either within an existing residential structure or within the 30% rule if you're in the shoreland zone. Let's just leave that out because we know there's no dispute we're not in the shoreland zone. So if that narrow exception, so we have broad prohibition, we have narrow exception. Narrow exception says, hey, the only time we allow an expansion of a non-conforming use is A, if it's a residential use, non-conforming use, and B, if it's an expansion within an existing residential structure, right? You couldn't expand, for example, a non-conforming residential use into a new structure on that same lot, arguably under that provision, right? And so the question becomes, if the expansion of a non-conforming residential use into a new structure is prohibited, then does it not follow that the expansion of a non-conforming commercial hotel use, which arguably is a much more intense use, into a new structure or structures is also prohibited? So that, I think when you look at 8.8A, you've got to at least consider what it is that means and what that narrow exception means. Okay, so the other thing to consider is that even within a residential even if you're dealing with a non-conforming residential use, the floor area of that use cannot be expanded except within the residential use exception that is in your ordinance. So there's a specific rule, it says 30% expansion. That's the only time you can do an expansion of floor area if you have a non-conforming residential use. So again, yet another kind of limitation on narrow exception carved out of the large prohibition that you can't expand a non-conforming use, commercial or residential. So what are some of the countervailing considerations with that? You do have a definition of an expansion of a use in your ordinance. It does not actually say an expansion of a non-conforming use. It just says an expansion of any use. It's the addition of one or more months of a use's operating season. We're not talking about that here. I don't think anybody is. The use of more floor area or the use of more ground area devoted to a particular use. So the question then arises, one of the arguments I think that the applicant is making is that if we've defined an expansion of a use in that manner, then the expansion, you don't have an expansion as long as you're not expanding the floor area, meaning as long as the floor area does not increase in square footage. That's one interpretation. But expansion of floor area, could it mean also expansion of floor area into a new structure? That's another interpretation. And then, so as I've mentioned before, you would have an expansion of a non-conforming use if you had an expansion, the devotion of more ground area devoted to a particular use. And that's something also that I think the planning board probably needs to take into account. There's another provision in your ordinance, I think, that you could look at to inform you in how you would interpret these provisions, and that is that Section 8.1 of your land use ordinance says that the intent of this article, so at Section 8, it deals with non-conforming uses, structures, lots, right? Non-conforming is of all kinds. And it says the intent of this article is to promote land use conformities, except that a non-conforming condition is permitted to continue as it existed prior to the date such condition became non-conforming under the provisions of the article as amended. And I think in looking at that, in combination with the idea that you should be getting rid of non-conformities, the law disfavors the continuation of non-conformities, can also inform your decision on what is meant by, hey, if we're only allowing a narrow exception for residential uses to be expanded within existing residential structures, should we also be saying that a non-conforming commercial use is limited in its ability to expand, if at all, into an existing structure, as opposed to taking the view that there can be it's not an expansion as long as the total square footage of floor area remains the same, no matter how you redistribute it on the property that was previously developed. I think you've got to look at the issue overall as what is meant by the non-conforming condition. And how much do you snapshot from the 1985 conditions of the lot, and how much is being changed? So I've gone on for probably far too long, but I think I should pause and see if there are any questions of me at this point.
No. And anyone have questions? Any board members here?
I'd like to ask a question. One of the excerpts I have is from the Municipal Code Enforcement Officers Training and Certification Manual from the Maine State Planning Office, Zoning and Land Use Regulations in 2010. And an excerpt from that says, basically, that is the continued existence of nonconforming structures or uses as they existed at the time of enactment or amendment of the ordinance is guaranteed. However, this guarantee only applies as they initially were. No changes that expand or, in quotes, improve the use or structure are generally allowed by the ordinance. And when you take a hotel and you break it into something more amenable and attractive, say cottages and so forth, and change your plan for more modern times, I would think that that would also be an improvement of the use.
Interesting.
Before, Amy, you comment on that, Nina, at the same time you say that, I think about the non-conforming use we just approved back in
the Yachtsman?
No, in the mainstay. Now A-Wall,
Right.
one of the
Right.
properties in the village residential area, where we went on and we worked with the applicant quite closely and talked about how the improvements that they were making couldn't make the nonconformity, couldn't make the use any more nonconforming, but certainly we weren't going to prohibit them from modernizing their facility. I think what you're talking about would have prohibited that. So I'm not.
Yes, and it's possible we should have prohibited that.
Well, we certainly should consider all of the possibilities here, but I just want to say that I'm still comfortable with what we did with the mainstay, and I think it's an improvement to the town. It's not any more non-conforming, and so the non-conformance wasn't expanded, in my opinion.
Well, one of
I
the
don't
ways
think
that
we should be in the business of asking people to let their properties degrade.
Well, we're not asking to let them, not degrade. These improvements basically are to modernize and attract more people. And one of the things that you need to ask is when you're looking at expansion of a non-conforming use is how do those changes impact the neighborhood? Do you want to put limitations in the use, as in Frost and Lucy, with a curfew, with vehicles, with patrons, with expansion of the location? You have to look at the whole neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood. And it's up to the planning board whether to allow, whether that would be an expansion of use and whether to allow. You have some leeway there.
I think in particular, the discussion should rightly center on whether or not the improvements or so-called improvements make the use more or less non-conforming. Not that any improvement is disallowed. That's what we're after. We're after not allowing an expansion of a non-conforming use.
But you're saying that they can improve. An improvement would not be an expansion of use, but it depends on
not in and of itself an expansion of a non-conforming use, but the discussion and the reason it comes to the planning board is that
that's right.
We need to
That's
consider
right.
and input from the public whether or not those improvements do constitute a more non-conforming instance of that non-conforming use, a worsening of it. Now,
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying,
okay.
Ed.
I just didn't want to go on record saying that any improvement was going to be disallowed.
No, I'm not saying that any improvement, but the improvements you have to look at not just the abutters, but the whole zone and the character of the use and how it will impact that zone.
Of course. I don't disagree with that.
And in the case of Mainstream, we looked at and heard from neighbors and the neighborhood basically on the impact and whether they were in favor of certain improvements, which they were not, and others that they were.
And there was some negotiation and some changes, and I think the plan that came out of it was better for the discussion.
Yes.
Both for the applicant and for the neighborhood, in my
yes.
opinion. So that wouldn't be out of line here. What I don't want to do is just say, no, don't even bother coming because you've got new structures. I don't see that. I see that there's a definition, very clear definition that I missed the first time. I struggled with this the first time because I didn't see in the definition section that there was something that so clearly said what our land use ordinance considers an expansion of a use, the increase in floor area or the increase in ground area. And then, as Amy's pointing out, there's later an exception that says, well, in the case of residential residences, where we've already let you increase the size of the structures by 30%, we're going to let you still have the use in the expanded part of that structure and would allow that use to expand in floor area by 30%. I think that exception in there makes sense given the allowed expansion in the structure. But
Or residents.
in residences, there's no 30% allowance for commercial expansion of structures that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm wrong there.
No.
But I don't think there is. And
No.
then so here we're really focused on whether or not this concept violates the definition of an expansion of use, given that it's a non-conforming use, right? Does it take up more floor area? Does it take up more ground area? I'm not bothered, at least yet. I'm open to hearing more discussion on this by the fact that the floor area is in new or improved structures. I don't think the definition talks to that. I do think that I'm concerned that the ground area of the green area is not the only area that's being developed on this concept. So that seems to me to be the elephant in the room here. That we've got a very clear green area. If you accept the argument that says that entire area is already in use as for this non-conforming use, I think there's some discussion that needs to be had there. But given that you accept that, then what are we doing in the area just to the right of the green area by developing the stormwater treatment basin that wasn't needed in the past and now is needed, arguably because of all of the new structures and paving and modifications? I'd be interested in hearing Ralph talk to that, or Steve. What do you have in mind there? How do you make that case?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the argument there is that, well, first of all, to step back, it's our position that simply modernizing a facility, it is not in and of itself an expansion of a use. I agree, Ed, that you look at it very carefully as the definition. And again, we don't believe that we've exceeded the floor area or the ground area. The stormwater detention basin, and Steve can speak better to why it has to be there, is a necessity to meet the modern development standards that the DEP has. And that's really the only location on the property that we could put it. Unless, Steve, you have a different on that.
No, I would agree with that. This property, when it was first developed, did not have to meet stormwater requirements. And as you know, time goes on, projects that come forward have to meet new standards. And this is one that has this, and one is the stormwater component, stormwater treatment, stormwater retention. And so, for instance, let's say this property had to, let's say they had to change their septic system. The old system that's there probably doesn't meet current standards. So if they just wanted to operate the hotel as it is today, they would have to expand that septic system in some fashion. And they may not be able to do it within the ground area that they have. So do you stop them from fixing their septic system, or do you allow them to improve that to meet current standards? So that's kind of what the stormwater treatment is to meet current standards. And we have to, then water flows downhill, so we have to have it in the lowest part of the site to do that.
I appreciate that it's needed, okay? I'm just, Ralph, if you, as I read your letter that's included as part of the application, it says the argument for that whole green area being considered as part of the part of the hotel, that you say it's not just the buildings, it's the well, it's the, the driveways, the I'm sure it doesn't say in the letter, but it's the area where they put up the tent for the weddings. It's all of that, where people took their walks, and all of that is considered part of the resort area. So you say, okay, let's say I buy that argument, and I happen to. Now you step back and you say, okay, now here's the new plan, right? I'm going to try to make it a lot smaller than my first concept. I've shrunk it all down, but you know, in doing it, all of the things I need, and I don't need a well anymore, but I still need stormwater treatment. Well, the only place I have to put it and do this upgrade and get it accepted is right there. And it's going to cause me to go develop another 10% of the land. I'm having a hard time not seeing it as the same argument that we just made to say why the green area was allowable. So I don't know where to go with that.
Yeah, understood. And I guess Steve and the engineers need to take a look at, can that be done within the green area?
I agree, because I don't buy Steve's argument. If you had the original footprint and you wanted to upgrade the septic system and a non-conforming use, I think that has to be within the area that you use, and you cannot expand outside that area. Even if it means taking away something like a tent area because of strict construction of the rules. Basically, you can't go expanding into another area just because you're modernizing or improving something.
Understood.
So, Ed, I'd like to go back to your discussion of the 30% expansion of residential uses. My understanding is, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that the 30%...
We got Werner here, all right? So don't look to me to be the expert. You and I are both students here.
But my understanding is that the 30% must be contiguous or at least contiguous, yes, to the existing structure. You can't say by 30% by building a whole new building, not contiguous to the existing structure.
I think that may or may not be true, but we're not talking about that 30%. We're not changing the structures here. I mean, we're not asking for that 30% allowance.
No, I understand that, but we were using that as an analogy, but...
Yeah, I'm missing your point. I'm sorry.
Well, my point is that if you assume that you could apply those same restrictions to the existing application, and that 30% expansion would be allowable, my understanding is that the 30% would have to be contiguous to an existing building. You can't say, I've got a building here and I want to add 30%, so I'm going to put another building over here, not connected to the existing structure.
Werner, help us out here.
That's correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think
we've done some collection of buildings and...
Yes, but they always go to the existing structure. We take a shed and say, we're gonna take that away, but you can put 30% on to the house that is in front of the shed.
So that's for non-conforming structures, was my point. We don't have any non-conforming structures here, so I'm having a hard time understanding why we're trying to bring that over.
Yeah, I think I'll just give you a quick example on this, but I agree that the 30% expansion piece isn't. I don't see that as a relevant portion to bring up here. But the practical example of that would be is you have a residential home that is a non-conforming use, okay, and for example, if within the 30% guidelines, if you could do, let's say, a dormer expansion, okay, which would, potentially increase some floor area and increase some volume.
So you're getting a daycare in it or something? Is that what you're thinking about? What's non-conforming use? Help me out here.
Just a residential being a non-conforming use, just single family home. Just think of it conceptually that it's not permitted where it is currently located. Okay.
Did you?
As a use. Okay.
All right.
So that provision of the ordinance still lets you do the 30% expansion, even though it's a non-conforming use.
Say it was in the resource protection area. We've had a situation like that.
That's right. That's right. That's where that particular language is applicable.
Okay. But again, if that was a commercial building, that we'd be talking about something else. That allowance is for residential.
That's correct. That language that Amy discussed with you is specific to residential. But I don't, my understanding is that we're not talking about expansion of, numerically speaking, we don't have, an expansion of square footage or volume here. That's my understanding, is that the applicant calculated all that out, and that they're within the existing calcs of, the floor area and volume of what they have. So, but I'll let them, speak to that piece.
That's the premise.
That's the premise.
But we're struggling here back with, is this an expansion of the ground area?
Yeah, I wouldn't be bringing the 30% piece into that, because it's a different, it's not applicable to this application.
Correct.
Yes.
It can't be expanded at all. That's how I read that definition.
Yeah, and what Amy has advised you all, and what I think you all are doing is having this discussion about expansion, about what does it mean to not expand, the use of the ground area. I think that's the piece that you're discussing right now, and that you're working through, to figure out, like, well, what does that mean, and how do we define that, and do we, agree or disagree with what's shown on this plan?
Well, it seems that the stormwater area that is now outside the green zone is really fairly problematic. Kind of agree with what Ed said about it, that, and well, anyway, I don't know if anyone else has anything to say at this point.
Well, my thought is sort of along the same lines, that whatever is developed, I think, should be inside the green boundary, including treatment provisions. I think it would be, I think it'd be useful, good idea to do that. Just bring it all inside the green somehow.
Understood.
But given that you did that, let's suppose you magically, that Steve and Ralph go off and work with the team, and they come back and they do that. Shouldn't we guys at least talk about, absent that development, in that red area outside of the green, what about the rest of it? Based on what we heard Amy tell us and all, and do we think that has, given that the right proof of grandfathering is there, and that the calculations hold up to say that, yes, we haven't expanded the floor area, and all the setbacks are met, is there a chance that we should hear this, and that it could be with discussion, like we did on the mainstay, come to a solution that would be amenable to the applicant and to the board and to the town? Is it worth a shot? Or do we think there's something substantively wrong with this that violates the land use ordinance outside of, if you stay within the green area?
Well, I think there are a lot of questions that have to be answered.
Yep.
Well, one of them is it keeping with character of what was originally there? And you have to look, for example, at the public in the past has it always had a liquor license, parties and so forth. What are they going to put in there? It's not just, an expansion of the restaurant as it was. If it isn't, then it's an expansion of use. How are they going to change it? Is it going to increase traffic? Is it going to be open later at night? Is it going to disturb the neighbors? Is it going to change the traffic patterns around? There are a lot of questions that need to be asked. And on the hotel, once you put those cottages out there and you put structures outside the hotel, you no longer have guests staying in the hotel. They're wandering around the property, and they're going to be wandering into areas that they weren't used that much before. How is that going to affect the neighborhood? How is it going to affect, not just the abutters, but are there going to be more traffic patterns? Is he going to put in fire pits around those cottages and so forth and have people out at night talking? It's the same things that we looked at with the Mainstay Inn.
Yeah.
There are a lot of questions to be answered before we can look at whether this is an expansion of use.
I just didn't want them to go off and us to go commit to having those discussions, which are non-trivial. If there was something fundamentally flawed with this that obviously violated the land use ordinance, that's all. I think it makes perfect sense that there's going to be a lot of discussion. And as you know, I don't think the community interest is going to go away. So yeah, I think it's an investment, but let's make sure that there's not something that we see that's fundamentally wrong up front.
Yeah, well, I think the board members are going to have different opinions about that.
Okay.
For example, I think once you take a hotel that's in one structure and you take those rooms and you scatter them all around, you get much more use of the property. And to me, that's an expansion of use.
That's an
I'm sorry?
It depends on how you look at it. But, you're getting a parking lot there. You're going to have more golf cart activity. It's going to be more occupancy probably given in the past. And how is that going to affect the neighborhood? How is it going to affect beach use? And, people are going to come back and say, Goose Rocks Beach, it's mostly residential and it's meant for the residents and the people who can park around. And now, the only hotel in Goose Rock zone is grandfathered in, the Tides Inn, and look at the activity there. And then they say add another hotel and you're adding more people, constantly every day at the beach during beach season, and that adds to the pollution. So you got a lot of things to think about there.
Right, but now you're into that subjective area about, whether or not making your property more attractive is expanding its use. And
that's right.
You know more than I do about the case law on that, and that there's a lot of it. And
I can tell you right now that the case law is very divided, and you're going to have to make a decision on that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think that's acceptable to me.
Yeah.
As long, the applicant goes in with his eyes open on that point. Let's make sure there's nothing else that they're not aware of and that we're not aware of, that we can think of right now.
I think we've given them enough to think about. I think we've given the board members enough to think about.
Okay. I'm good with that. That's all I have, Tom.
So, Ralph, were you about to say something, or?
Well, just, these are all good questions. They're all good issues that, most of them we knew we would have to address when we come back with a full application. And certainly the burden is on us to prove what was historically used what parts of the property were historically used for the hotel purposes. What we were hoping to leave with tonight was to see if there was a consensus among the board that if we can prove that the green area, the area outlined in green, was all historically used for hotel purposes, does this plan meet the provision that we don't increase the ground area devoted to a particular use?
And I can tell you right now, I'm not sure I can answer that given the information you've provided. Ralph, there's an old Dow and Coulomb plan from 1986,
Yes.
which I could not. It's blank when you try to get it through the website and the Registry of Deeds. Would you have access to that? Do you think it's really in there?
The plan is on record. I don't know if I have an 11 by 17 or a full-size copy, but I will check. But if I don't have a full-size one, I know we can get one from Dow and Coulomb.
Okay, well,
They're still around.
I'm just wondering if the hotel structure is on there.
I don't have it with me right now, so I believe it. I'm almost positive it is. But I mean, it showed a lot of different elements of the use of the property, not just the hotel building.
But that might be helpful to the board.
Certainly, no, we can make that available.
Great.
So I think the real issue which we keep coming back to is staying within the green though. So obviously you guys have a good hunk of work to figure out how to stay within the green. And then we all collectively have to sort all these things we've been hearing and go from there. So I think we're probably as far as we're going to be able to get information to you, Ralph and Steve, at this point.
I mean, I've heard one board member seem very reluctant about express concern that even if we stay within the green area, what we're doing might constitute use of more ground area. I heard another board member indicate that isn't necessarily so, that there are a lot of other issues about whether or not it's an expansion of use, but that by staying within the green area, if we can prove that was the historic area, then we're okay. But so I've just really heard two board members give opinions, and be helpful to hear a little more.
Well, can I jump in here a little bit? I mean, I appreciate the applicant wants to get a clear reading from the board, so that before it invests significant dollars into engineering. But from a procedural standpoint, I don't think the planning board, is obligated to say how they would rule on this legal issue definitively. I mean, you've had a robust discussion about it, and you may not have consensus yet among planning board members. But I think, Ralph, you've gotten a pretty good idea of where the planning board is focusing right now.
No, I understand. I wasn't looking for a definitive ruling. I wasn't looking even for a definitive statement. I just wanted to see if other board members had concerns. But if that's what we have, then that's what we go with.
I think you've heard from most of us. See, so
Okay. I mean, I know we have some major issues in front of us that we need to address. And so the team will be discussing those.
okay. So I think at this point we will be continuing initial review whenever you next come and see us.
Correct. We won't be, I can guarantee you, we won't be ready for December 1.
No, I wasn't figuring you would.
No.
But we have enough to do December 1 without. So, all right, I guess I need to have a motion to continue. I think I need a motion to continue the initial review to a later time.
I can make that motion.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, then I'll go through the usual board members. And John, even though you've contributed a lot, you don't get to vote for this part of it. So I'm in favor. Nina?
In favor.
Scott?
In favor.
Ed?
Favor.
Larry?
In favor.
Okay. So I hope we've given as much data as you guys need, and I hope to read the minutes of this meeting in gory detail when I'm a little more awake. And, you know, it is after all 3 a.m. or something like that in Paris right now. So anyway.
Rub it in, Tom. That's good. Yeah.
6 hours of jet lag is nothing to rub in, believe me.
You're looking for sympathy, right? Bad for you.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll see you guys next time. And we'll probably see you for Yachtsman.
Yachtsman.
Yeah. But anyway, so I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Yes, please.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Good night.
Thank you for your time,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Aye.
Yeah.